We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And you know what? Before we started this podcast, I had it in mind that I was going to surprise Tom and everyone else by wearing my new Oculus Quest visor that just arrived today, and I haven't even turned it on, but I was going to make a joke of wearing it. But I forgot to do that, so yeah, there you go. That's a great reveal. Although, you know what? I can reach over here.
Yeah, grab it. You know, let's see it.
It looks like ski goggles, basically, except big and fat.
Blacked out ski goggles. Yeah.
Yep, but
is it? I mean, I know I could just Google it, but how much do those things cost?
So it's $400 American, $500 and something Canadian, because of course exchange rates are terrible right now. But what makes this so cool? This is a VR headset, and this is it. It doesn't have any wires. It doesn't. You don't
plug it into a computer.
To a computer at all. It is all contained in this, with significantly higher resolution OLED screens than the PlayStation VR.
Okay.
So that'll be nice, because the screen door effect in PlayStation VR is pretty severe. So I'm looking forward to reducing that.
I've used the HTC Vive Pro, I think, was the one I used when I went to that VR place. So that was pretty good.
Yep, and if you're looking at the video, these are the controllers for...
Yeah. Why do they always have those round things?
So it actually can, like, see your finger inside.
Oh, it's got, like, a little leap motion thingy in there?
Yeah, and also there are cameras on the outside of the headset because, of course, you can't... It doesn't have any wires, so there's no external cameras. So the cameras are outside, are on the headset looking out, and it uses... These things are, like, emitting IR, and it uses that to track the position of your hands.
Oh, so you got to keep them in front of you. You can't, like...
Well, I mean, they...
Turn behind you. And,
yeah, I mean, you can't put them right behind you, but because there's accelerometers and everything in it, too, it does a pretty darn good job, apparently. I haven't used the thing yet, but going by all the reviews, they say it does a pretty darn good job of, you know, you're swinging around your lightsaber, and it doesn't lose track of where it is. So, yeah, looking forward to getting to that.
Don't like Oculus because the...
3 months from now.
Owner guy is some sort of weird misogynist or something.
Oh yeah, no, I feel horrible about buying anything Oculus, but I want a headset that isn't tethered to wires. So, you know, sacrifices are made in morals.
So the other day, somebody said something to me about, or no, it was a Facebook thing. Somebody said, name, 5 heroes of yours that are women. Some sort of like, you're a sexist because you can't name 5 of them. And I was like, I can't name 5 heroes of mine that are men. So it's not just women. I can't name any of them because every time, like, don't Google your heroes because God help you when you find out what they're like in real life because they might be human, and a lot of them are pretty crappy humans.
You can have one major accomplishment and then still have the rest of your life. I mean, hey, it's the Harvey Dent quote, right?
Yeah,
live long enough to see yourself become a villain.
It's getting to the point now where I'm afraid to look up, like, oh, I really like this food. I better not look up where it comes from because it's not sustainably harvested and they're using child labor to get it or whatever.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much what The Good Place is all about. They're like, it's not really possible to be a good person because you can do a good thing, but somewhere down the line there's something bad attached to it.
And it's really feeling more and more that way. So I think as a society, we're just going to have to get a lot more stringent, just have to. I can't get over it.
We could stop thinking of things as being binary, where if it's good, it must be entirely good without any trace of bad in order to still be considered good. We could get over that. That's
not my issue. I mean, that's not my issue as much as certain things just get to be so bad. I mean, I stopped watching. When I did a little research on Roman Polanski. I mean, you didn't have to do very much research.
That doesn't take long.
It didn't take very long.
It'll be the first result, most likely.
I was like, I'm not watching any more of those movies. And, I've done sort of the same thing. I've told my kids, I'm like, I assume, like, all music lyrics are, like, acting. It's like, it's all make-believe, If I find out that that Jay-Z actually beat the crap out of a bunch of women, or not Jay-Z. Yeah, who was it?
R.
that
Kelly?
Was no, R. Kelly. I mean, he's terrible.
Yes,
that's
he's known to be very terrible. Yes.
No, I was thinking that Dr. Dre. That's who I was thinking of. He like the back in the day, and the woman reporter, he didn't like her report, so he smacked her around or whatever. I was like, the minute I heard that, I was like, I'm out. Got a piece out of that. I can't listen to old school NWA. I can't listen to any of that stuff anymore. I just. And if I had heard something like, "Oh yeah, but he's totally changed now," but I don't think so. I don't think that dude's changed.
Well, that's our review. First impression of the Oculus Quest that went off.
Yeah,
in weird directions, but
so far, Rob's in favor of no wires and a slight amount of misogyny, and I'm still on the massage. I don't really know what's wrong with that dude.
Looking the other way and not really looking to my Oculus Quest headset for probably quite a while. So yeah, you'll hear my impressions when I finally get around to playing the thing.
Yeah,
all right. We got so many questions. Let's see how many we can answer.
All right, so let's go to our listeners of the week. This week, we're going to thank our 82 patrons over at patreon.com, including Grant. So we're up one from last week. We're trying to eke up into that 100.
That'd be cool. We're aiming for 100. That's patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation, if you'd like to think of it that way. Thank you, Grant, for being one of our 82 patrons. And if you'd like to make a one-time donation, you can do that at our website, although not right this second because bandwidth limit exceeded. But avrant.com over on the right-hand side when it's up and running at the first of the month coming up here on Saturday again.
Is there bandwidth problems?
Right,
we even had somebody look at it. We had somebody look at it. They said it was fixed.
Yeah, it was a couple of months ago. It's back to being broken. But it says support AVRant over on the right-hand side. There's a cup of coffee logo that'll take you to PayPal, where you can use your PayPal account or just a credit card if you don't want to sign up for a PayPal account.
All right, I want to thank our other listeners of the week. If you want to be a listener of the week and you can't support us financially, which I completely understand, then figure out some way you did support us and let us know about it. So Karl pinged SVS on Twitter when he took advantage of the Memorial Day sale to pick up a PB1000 that we recommended. And Tap mentioned us to SVS when he pulled the trigger on a pair of PC2000 cylinder subs during their Memorial Day sale. So I did share that on our Facebook feed.
Okay.
The Memorial Day sale. So I feel like
it is an annual thing. It is very nice that you can get discounts on great SVS subs. Congrats, Karl and Tap, for grabbing some of those, and thanks for talking us up to SVS. And you know what? We didn't give out our contact info here before we got into listeners of the week.
Oh, did I already do that?
Do that.
I don't feel good. I don't want to. All right. You can contact us. To get your questions answered, you send them to question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com when it's up.
Mm-hmm. First of the month, it'll be back.
It'll be back on the first of the month. Well, when's the first of the month? Is it Friday?
June the 1st is Saturday.
Ooh, well, so that's when the podcast will be posted too, because I can't even post it.
There you go. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you won't be posting the podcast to the broken website on Friday.
Yeah, I can't do it. So avrant.com, leave a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant Podcast. YouTube.com/AVRant to see our videos and not comment, because we don't care what you have to say, because YouTube commenters are the worst.
Disabled. Ha ha ha.
They are the worst. It's unfortunate.
It is.
That it has to be that way. And I don't understand why YouTube seems to draw so many of the most terriblest of people's.
It is.
Honestly, and you may think I'm a terrible person. And I can't control that, listener up to this podcast, and you might be here just for Rob, which I can totally understand that. But I do not comment on YouTube. I think I have left a total of a comment on all of the YouTube
Anytime
videos.
I've even considered it, I'm just like, what is the point of doing that? So, nope, don't do it.
I mean, I know there's YouTube content creators who say that they read every single comment, and I see them respond to comments and stuff like that. But I just have never really been drawn to doing that. It really feels like writing a letter to the editor, or a fan mail or something. That's what it feels like to me. It's not like Facebook where you feel like you're kind of actually touching that person in some way. Yeah, not YouTube so much. It feels a lot more like...
Well, we don't have to worry about it anymore. Comments are disabled on our channel. But you can contact us individually if you want to.
And Rob's just really trying to get this podcast
I want to get going. Yep. I'm Rob at AVRant.com. I'm at First Reflect on Twitter. Tom's Tom at AVRant.com. He's at AVRant_Tom on Twitter. All the things being posted there. Nothing this Friday. Yeah.
All right, so in the news, Karl, Tap, Chris, and me all sent to Rob a link that says Universal Music Group has partnered with Dolby to create thousands of Dolby Atmos music mixes for the 5 people that can take advantage of them. Remixes of catalog songs as well as brand new songs will be made using object-based audio. I think this makes the most sense for cars. More than anything. I don't know if
I've seen Atmos in cars yet.
Well, it's not, but that's where I would put it because that to me...
I mean, from some of the write-ups, it sounded like they're aiming it more at Dolby Atmos for headphones for portable use. That seemed like what they're targeting.
Yeah. That works too, but I think cars makes a lot of sense because, even in the Bang & Olufsen sound system that's in there, whatever car that was, I can't remember what it was. They had like zones that you could do it for. And
many very affordable cars have oodles of little speaker drivers around the cabin now. So
right, and now I mean, you could actually for each car, they could do some measurements within the car because the cars are standardized. So what the cabin volume is and where the driver is going to be seated, more or less. Yeah. I just don't see myself listening to a lot of music in my home theater, but that's just me.
But yeah, it seems like they're aiming it at the headphone version of Atmos.
Yeah. So if you have way more money than willingness to learn how to back up your Ultra HD Blu-rays or regular Blu-rays or DVDs, Fusion Research announced their new 4K UHD Genesis movie server for a mere $7,000, as well as their 4K UHD player for a paltry $4,000. So 11 grand all in, and you could have something that could cost you almost nothing.
Now, technically, you don't actually need a separate player. The server can act as a thing that you put discs in and a playback device. If you look at the back, that's a PC board on the back of that thing. So it's a PC inside, and they said the player and the server are based off of the exact same thing. So really, I think the only difference is the software inside and the 12 terabytes of storage built in. That's your extra $3,000. $4,000 just seems to be what sort of the base platform, what they charge for it.
Yeah, so the server includes the 12 terabytes of RAID storage that can archive all current movie disc types. You can expand the storage capacity with your own NAS. The server includes a disk drive and can play back the movies itself, so the separate player is just to add playback in more rooms. 7 movies can be playing at once. Dude,
so one from the server plus 6 additional players.
Right. It's at $4,000 a piece.
Yep.
Jesus Christ. All right. The player can also act as a disk loader to send bit-for-bit backups to the server. Yeah, so get on it.
So that's your alternative to finding a UHD-friendly drive, installing that or adding it to a PC that you already own, getting the free Make MKV software and the free Plex software and doing things that way. That's the alternative.
You could pay somebody $11,000 to do it for you.
You sure can. I have no idea how it's legal, but there it is, Fusion Research.
Probably isn't. Microsoft announced they're streaming a gaming service, Project xCloud, because of course it's called xCloud.
But it's a little X. It's not even a big X.
It's technically capable of streaming any game that can play on current Xbox One hardware. Their goal is to make it as easy as possible for game developers to add support for streaming gameplay. Their Azure data centers will handle all of the intensive calculations so that even low-powered portable devices will be able to play Xbox games. God, how is this going to be horrible? In what way is this going to make my life worse? Is the question that I have to ask myself.
I mean, the thing they're always trying to overcome is latency, right? You press the button, does it respond immediately? And of course, on current networks, no, it does not. And that's why they can still justify charging however many hundreds of dollars for the next Xbox console that will, actually play discs or downloaded versions of games instead of streaming versions. But they're going headstrong into this streaming idea.
So they're not going to sell consoles anymore after this, is that what you're suggesting? Or they're going to sell
they're definitely
$4,000 $4,000 UHD player.
No,
they're going into the server market,
selling a successor to the Xbox One family. That is most definitely coming out, just like PlayStation is selling a very powerful, apparently, PlayStation 5 console. So that is still happening. Apparently, both of those gaming companies do not believe that going all streaming is quite what hardcore gamers are going to be willing to accept just yet. But the idea that they're building this out, that if you're a much more casual gamer who's not playing Twitch games or highly competitive, first-person shooters or fighters or something like that, that maybe streaming is all you need. You could have a much less expensive type of console. Heck, it could be built into an app in a smart TV for all we know, and you just attach a controller to that somehow, and that
Can
could
we
be
get
it.
some more story-based games and get away from all the first-person shooters and battle arena games for a little while? I'm ready. If this makes that happen, then okay, I'm 100%.
And if all the promises of what 5G networks could bring with super low latency and all that, maybe this will be the future in 5 to 10 years or something like that. And they have to start somewhere. They have to start now. So this is the beginning.
You want to make $1 bajillion? Here, you can have this idea, all right? I will take 0.001% of your annual profit for giving you this idea. Invent a light bulb that's also a lamp that's also a 5G Wi-Fi emitter thingy, and sell it to cities to replace all the lamps in their
well, I mean, they're planning to use street lamps as mounting positions for the transceivers, because you got to have gazillions of the transceivers. It requires line of sight. They're very short. It has to have line of sight, so even rain can be a big problem for 5G.
So Fox will release Alita Battle Angel, which is apparently a dumpster fire of a movie, on Ultra HD Blu-ray and HDR10, HDR10 Plus, and Dolby Vision, all on one disc. It's the first Fox title to include Dolby Vision. Previously, there were only major Hollywood studio dedicated to using only HDR10 and HDR10 Plus, but one of the first things Disney did after they bought Fox was to fire Fox's chief technology officer, who was a spokesperson for the HDR10 Plus Alliance. This now leaves Samsung as the sole member of the HDR10 Plus Alliance, and that is also not supporting Dolby Vision. So
the cheese stands alone.
One of us.
Panasonic's like, yeah, we're putting Dolby Vision on our TVs now. Philips is like, yeah, we're putting Dolby Vision on our TVs now. The last Hollywood studio that didn't have any Dolby Vision home releases is like, yeah, we're putting Dolby Vision on our discs now. So, yeah. Okay, Samsung, you stick in there with your old Dolby Vision. We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah. So, Battle Angel, I am interested in seeing the movie. I used to own, I think it was on VHS.
I mean, people have told me it's good. It just, the previews look terrible. But hey, that's previews. So
I'm not excited about it. And I've also heard the ending was unsatisfying. But honestly, the ending of the original movie, which I know comes from a manga, shut up, wasn't particularly wonderful either. The beginning of that movie was worth watching. At the end, it just kind of like slogged on.
I really am not familiar with it at all. So
yeah. All right. It's have you seen Elysium?
Nope.
The Matt Damon one where he's like part cyborg or something.
Yeah, where he's gets cybernetic stuff and goes up into the big ring in the sky. Yeah, I did see that.
Very similar. Very similar.
I was thinking something that started with an A instead of an E. It didn't ring.
Elysium. Sorry. Comments. Jim wanted to mention slickdeals.net as a site to find potential deals on home theater gear. He likes that you can pick up alerts for specific products, a brand, or a whole category. And he also wanted to say that he's very pleased with his JBL SP6II, whatever that is, in-wall speakers, which retail for $300 a pair, but can often be found at much lower prices. So
yeah, like 1/3 of the price, like $100 a pair, is quite common to find those.
I was walking through a hallway and music was playing. I was like, this sounds pretty good, because it was music that was being pumped in from another room. So like the actual band was out in this other area, and then you could hear it in the hallway. I was like, this sounds all right. I looked up, they were JBL in-ceiling speakers. So yeah,
JBL. We're starting to mention them.
Look at that. Right now, some fanboys like, what about pork? Sorry, man. Just get over it.
Bass heavy. JBL, bass heavy.
It's all right. They're all one brand as far as I'm concerned. Like all Infinity, Polk, JBL. It's all one brand. That just it's
getting that way with Sound United. It might be all one brand before we know it.
Yeah, they're like the Disney of home theater right now. All right, let's get into the questions here. Anaheim off the ledge, Josh. He's going to have like 15 names by the end of it.
That's right.
Soon to be divorced. Thankfully, Josh has a good sense of humor. He and his wife enjoyed our discussion from a couple of weeks ago, and now his wife is making sure he goes with dual PC 2000 subs instead of a single gigantic 18-inch model. So yeah,
good on.
They saw the Sony X950G in store. That's the one that caught his wife's eye. But we mentioned the X900F, which is less expensive, especially at the 85-inch size they would like to get, which is $1,000 price difference. One concern Josh has is how good the upscaling will be. His wife likes to watch classics. Casablanca, Gone with the Wind, Casablanca, Blanca. What the heck is wrong with me today? And blowing up those to an 85-inch size, Josh just wants to make sure that you aren't going to end up looking terrible. Get used to it, I guess. So is the Sony X900F a good choice on that front, or would the 950G be $1,000 better? You aren't worried about the upscaling in your TV when you can spend a fraction of the amount and get a decent upscaling, Blu-ray player. Or,
yeah, I mean, upscaling can be done in the player. It could be done in your AV receiver, or it could be done in the TV itself. If you're getting a Sony, letting the TV doing the upscaling would be a good choice, because they have probably the best upscaling of the major consumer TV brands. I don't know if he's talking about DVDs. I mean, Blu-rays, even if they're classics, Blu-rays are going to upscale wonderfully on any 4K TV, except for
just about any player format. Receiver can do it. It's not hard.
I'm thinking maybe he's talking about DVDs, 480p or 480i, in fact, on the disc. Right. But as far as that goes, as far as upscaling standard definition to 4K resolution, the Sony TVs do that about the best out of all the major consumer brands. So a very good choice there. The X950G is definitely not so much better that it's $1,000 better. The X900F was already excellent at upscaling standard definition. So the question is there something about the X950G that would be worth it? Now, what the 950G offers in the 75 and 85-inch sizes only, not in the 65 and smaller sizes, is their new X-wide angle filter, which is their attempt to give you better, wider viewing angles from an LCD screen. The problem is, in order to do that, the black levels and contrast take a big hit.
Okay.
So you go from the X900F, which had somewhere north of 5,000 to 1 native contrast just in the panel itself before you even activate the full array local dimming. You basically cut that down to around 1,400 to 1 in the X950G. It's a big and incredibly noticeable difference, especially if your room is not super bright.
Right.
I have looked at that, and I don't know if you were looking at a 75 or 85-inch size at the store. You might have been looking at a 65 or a 55 that don't have this X-wide angle filter, but I personally can't stand it. I'm like, you just made a really good TV suddenly look gray and washed out in like all circumstances. Like, yeah, I can move over to the side and it still looks as gray and washed out as when I'm right in front of it. But it's like, well, if that's what I want, I can move over to the side to the X900F. It'll look like that from the side, whereas bang on, it'll actually look pretty darn good and high contrasty and decent black levels. So my preference is to save the $1,000 and get the X900F, especially at this size, and the upscaling is going to be great.
Right. I still don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. And if it's Blu-ray, if you're going from Blu-ray, I mean, I can tell the difference from going, from when you go from DVD up to even 1080p.
Oh yeah,
that's not great, and it's not going to get that much. It's not going to get that much worse, but it's certainly not going to get any better going up to 4K. So depending on how far back you're sitting, so it would be worth it if those are movies that she really likes to watch. Hey man, birthdays, Mother's Day,
to at least get the Blu-ray versions.
Get the Blu-ray versions. I would definitely be repurchasing, because those classics are going to be re-released.
Yeah.
A lot of them are going to be in some form. So I would consider doing that. So he says, since the 85-inch X950G, which we already said not to buy, at $5,000, which is $1,000 more than the one we want him to buy, was under consideration. Bumped that price up only another $1,000. This man, dude, he must have maybe not. Maybe he only spends money he has, but perfect candidate for huge credit card debt. Watch out. Anyways, up to $6,000 also bought a 77-inch OLED into contention. And since he mentioned to his wife that they'll be willing to spend $6,000, maybe they should explore the possibility of a projection setup. It was at this point that she yelled at him and walked out of the room. What did he say wrong? Yeah. This is I have walked this tightrope with my wife when I was talking about subwoofers and trying to figure out, what subwoofer to get, how much to spend and stuff. And I kept her she didn't really want to talk about it. So it was very hard, but I tried to keep her like in the loop as far as what my train of thought was, which in general is a good thing, but doesn't always work out in your favor because then she's just like, shut up. I don't want any of this stuff anymore. First of all, you're now up to $6,000 from $4,000, which is a third increase in price.
Yeah. And you went from originally he was going to be 7 feet away, now he's 9 feet away. And I'm like, 9 feet away, I want the larger screen size. I mean,
I would think so.
As
too.
Gorgeous as a 77-inch OLED, of course, would be. Gaming is a high priority, we know, for Josh. And there is that little bit of trepidation that you certainly wouldn't want to see any, image retention or burn-in or something like that. And there is no 85-inch size available. And yeah, I mean, $4,000 gets you a super nice 85-inch LCD TV that I can definitely back and recommend. And there you go. And your room is not conducive to a projector setup. So, and you don't really need a projector at 9 feet. I mean, you certainly could.
Yeah.
But 9 feet is right in that nice butter zone where, an 85-inch LCD is going to look darn nice from that.
Well, this is the thing. Josh's wife, if hopefully you're listening, you could spend less, and get not a 4K with Dolby Vision and all the stuff that you're going to end up getting. You could spend less, get a projection setup for $2,000 instead of $4,000, what you're looking at for this TV. You can do that now. Your setup is not, because he's got like doors and windows and crap,
I mean, this is like a converted sunroom. It's not a completely blacked out room. The space,
it would make it extremely hard to watch this thing during the day.
Yeah, it's not, it's not like the whole space is dedicated to being a theater.
Now, if your crazy husband came to us and said, I'm going to get projection set up with the humongous subwoofers and stuff, I bet that he sounds just like that too. We could make it work. We could get you a light rejecting screen so that even in a fairly well
hot spotting glory,
you could watch it, and then at night you would watch it and you'd be like, why does it look so weird? We'd be like, that's what happens when you have all this. So yes, he is right. But if you wanted to get a projector with the same sort of specifications and capabilities that your TV that you're looking at has, we're talking a lot more than $4,000. To be honest with you,
$4,000 gets you the X790, but you would want a blacked out room for that to look its best.
Yeah, you'd have to black out room. You got to buy the screen on top of it. There's everything else. That
$4,000 X900F settled.
Yeah. So he's trying to decide on a center speaker. He heard on Home Theater Geeks. Why are you listening to anybody but us, bro? What's up with that?
I liked Home Theater Geeks. I wish they'd come back.
Back in the day, how the center speaker should be your biggest and best speaker, which I totally do not agree with, but let's go on. Since so much of the important sound gets played by the center. Really? More important than all the stuff that's coming out of the left and right speakers? I don't know about that. So anyways, that stuck with him. So when he saw the sheer size and the clearance price on the Emotiva C2, it made him wonder if he should get that. What's our thoughts on that one? What speakers were we pointing him towards? I don't remember.
Well, since he has these Silverline audio speakers that are like 15 years old, and we're not entirely sure, but they look like a very normal Silk Dome tweeter type of design, we were like, just get some RBH. Like the Impression Elite Center, if that doesn't match, then that means your speakers are weird. So that's what we were pointing him towards. I mean, again, he's 9 feet away. So an RBH Impression Elite Center, it's going to work. And don't get this Emotiva. Dude, do not get this Emotiva. I mean, can I just leave it at that, please? Can I please just leave it at that? Don't get that one.
And plus, I mean, how much bigger can it possibly be than the RPH?
Oh, that thing is huge. Sound? It's a tower turned on its side. It's gigantic.
Oh, is that what that is?
It's enormous.
That's ridiculous. You do not need again.
It has two side-by-side mid-range drivers. It makes no sense.
You don't need any of that. You don't need to have a huge center channel. I mean, you're only sitting 9 feet away.
Your center should play the same as your front left and right speakers. I mean,
so
they
having
were
it
meant
be
to be
bigger
three
makes
identical
no
speakers.
sense. So the time when I worry about center channel sizes is when I'm looking at home theater in the box setups with tiny cube speakers, and then if they have tiny cube speakers except the center channel is a little bit larger, I'm like, well, that's good. Because those cube speakers are probably garbage, and this will be slightly less garbage.
Right.
And that's just the part where the dialogue comes out. But again, I've said this before. I've drawn the ire of many people when I say it, but the center channel is your least important speaker in your entire setup.
You can literally remove it and still have that channel play just fine.
It's the only speaker in the entire setup that can be played, you can physically remove it, and your receiver will still have that noise come out where you think it's supposed to be. So I'm sorry, yes, its center channels are very nice, and I think we need to have them.
I do agree. If you have one, it should be a good one. You don't want to say, oh, I'm going to go from a phantom center to a really crappy center speaker. Don't do that. I mean, if you're going to have one, be a good one. But yeah, no, get the one we said to get. It'll be real good.
Yeah. So he drew up some diagrams with his wife, and with the cylinder PC 2000 subs, she said any of the 4 following layouts would be acceptable, so which layout is best? Subs in the 2 front corners? No. Subs in the middles of the 2 side walls, which means both subs would actually be behind the seating area.
That one gets my vote.
Not yet. Let's talk. You know what? He cut off that picture. That's why it's confusing to me. So one sub in the front right corner, one sub in the rear left corner, even though the rear left corner is way behind the seating area. Maybe in the middle of the front wall, which would require our PC 2000 to be laying on its side behind the center speaker, and the sort of the middle of the back wall, but since there's a storage room that takes up the rear right corner of the space, it's actually not the farthest back wall. Okay, so he gave us diagrams, but one of the diagrams is the side placements, but he cut off the bottom of the image. So
yeah, we're not seeing the actual back of the room there. So
that was my first go because of the. But then I looked at the image and I saw that it was because he cut off the bottom, and I didn't really notice that. It looks like it's offset towards the back of the room, so it's not in the actual physical middle of the wall from the looks of the image.
Just the way the image has been cropped. That's all.
Yeah. My second place would be the front right corner, rear left corner.
Yeah, diagonally opposite corners. I agree.
That would be my second one. And the 2 at the front is garbage. Nope. I don't really think it makes a total lot of sense to do the middle of the front wall. And
it seems like he's making a lot of compromises to try and squeeze those in there. No, I like the middle of the 2 side walls. I think that'll be, visually you won't even barely notice them, and acoustically it should work the best out of all the options that you presented. So that gets my vote. If that doesn't work, diagonally opposite corners.
Yeah. So along with Josh here, Karl also asked this question. Rob said that he uses a mono subwoofer output even though he has 2 subs and Odyssey sub EQ HT. Why? And does that require adding a mini DSP? And would Rob still use a mono subwoofer signal even if certain speakers were using a higher crossover frequency like 120 or 150? Well, I'll tell you the answer to this. You have to ask Rob. You can ask me. He doesn't need a mini DSP. All he needs is a Y splitter that comes off of his
Yeah, in fact, I don't even use that because the SVS subs that I have, they have, well, first of all, I can just run the 2 outputs in mono, so that's one way from the receiver itself, or the subs I have also have an output, a full range output, so I could daisy chain them if I wanted to do it that way, but a Y splitter would also work.
Right, and he does not care if it's 120 or 150. The fact that you have dual subs, I mean, his subs are awfully close to him, so it would be more of a problem for him than most people. I can reach out and touch a sub, either way. But for most people where you have a sub, 6 or 9 feet or 10 feet away from you, as soon as you put that second sub in there, it makes localization even harder. And the whole reason for doing this is because your subs are actually meant to be, even though they're across the room from each other, they're meant to be playing as one.
Yes.
And when your receiver, you tell it, some receivers, when you tell them that you've got 2 subs, it will say, okay, well, I'll independently EQ each one of those subs as if they were an individual speaker.
Or in the case of sub EQ HT, it gives it individual distance settings, and that's actually the thing that I'm trying to avoid most. And this is something where we disagree with the advice that Gene over at Audioholics gives. He wants both subs to be time-aligned independently, which is giving them the independent distance settings. And we're like, the way all the Harman stuff goes, and also experiments that we've run and experiments that Ray Coronado ran when he tried to independently time-align each of his 5 subwoofers.
I miss that guy.
It doesn't work out the way that things work in Harman's version of multiple subwoofers. What they want you to do is you first want to get the 2 subs working together to produce uniform sound. Once they're doing that, they combined with the room are one unit.
Right.
Whether using 2 subs, 3 subs, 4 or more, all of those subs together with the room are now one bass producing thing. And that one thing should be time aligned to the rest of your speakers, because it is producing the bass for all of the speakers in your system, and you are time aligning all of your other speakers. The bass producing thing, which is this combination of multiple subs and the room, should also be time aligned to that. But each individual part of that bass producing thing should not be individually time aligned. So that's why I want a single mono signal, because I do have one bass producing thing. It happens to be using 2 drivers and my room, but it is one thing, and that one thing should be time aligned. So that's why I tell my AV receiver I have one subwoofer, and that's it.
Yeah. People get hung up on this 80 hertz, crossover, and anything above 80 hertz becomes localizable.
It isn't really true. Actually, Audioholics just put out a whole video about that a couple of weeks ago, where they're like, the research actually says it's like considerably higher than that, but because we're dealing with slopes and speakers playing down into that range and subwoofers playing up into that range, 80 hertz is a very safe choice. But it actually can be higher than that and still not be localizable if you get a good blend.
And even 80 hertz and lower can be localizable if the sub is too close to you and it's only one sub. That can
and it's producing harmonics or distortion that are above that frequency. There's all kinds of things that come into play.
Yeah. So, don't get hung up on the numbers. All right, Bobby. Bobby is still finalizing his 12x12 theater room. He still hasn't bought his subwoofers. But first, he's acoustically treating his room with 8 absorption panels that will be mounted on the side and back walls. He doesn't really have room for large corner bass traps. His 2 rear corners actually have bulkheads, so they stick out like columns. Should he cut some holes in those and put insulation inside to act as bass traps?
No.
What's inside there? You can't just go cut stuff. I wouldn't do that. And even if you did, you'd have to leave the holes open. Just having the insulation of the walls isn't going to
Right. Yeah. If you were going to patch over the drywall again. I don't think that's what he was talking about. I think he was talking about literally drilling or cutting holes into columns like what I have beside me here.
Yeah.
And then having insulation in there so that, because he's like, I don't have the space to put a big super chunk or a corner bass trap or something because I have these bulkheads in the back of my room, but could I just cut open those bulkheads and basically turn them into frames for insulation? No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Let's pretend. And why on God's green earth they would have bulkheads with nothing in them? Let's pretend there's nothing in these things. You could cut out the drywall, literally all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just cut it all out, and then shove that full of insulation, and then put speaker grill fabric over the top of it.
If
that's what you would have to do.
If they are a literally empty bulkhead for absolutely no reason, that I don't think that's the case. I think those bulkheads are there to, say, cover a pipe or electrical wiring or HVAC ducts or something of that nature.
Yeah, don't go cutting into stuff.
No, don't do that. No. And honestly, he's going to have dual subs. That is taking care of the low bass uniformity for you. I'm not this whole thinking that, I have to have bass traps, that's somehow going to have anything to do with deep bass. It doesn't. It's like mid bass. It's upper bass. That's where bass traps could have an effect. And while it is preferable to not try to treat all of that stuff with EQ because it isn't always effective at every seat, it's still, you've got to live on reality's terms. And when you can't have a ton of bass traps because you've got a small room and there just isn't space for it, you resort to using some equalization for that upper bass. And while it might not be the absolute pinnacle of what it could be in a theoretically perfect room, it'll still be pretty good.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
So all along he intended to go with dual PB1000 subs. Those are ported subs and big. But now that almost everything else is set up in this room, he's seeing he has very limited space, and the PB1000 subs would be a very tight squeeze. The SB2000 would physically fit a lot better, but they cost more. So can he justify the price? Would the SB2000s actually perform better than the PB1000s in any way? They perform about the same.
Yeah, output-wise, they're very, very similar. I mean, I can put a little thing into your mind, which is that they actually do continue to produce sound to an even lower frequency than the PB1000s do. Because the PB1000s at about 18 hertz kind of drop off a cliff. There's a very steep filter applied right below 18 hertz on the PB1000s.
I mean, it's increasingly diminishing volume level.
It is,
so
and it began to get quieter at a higher frequency than the PB1000s did. But you're in a very small room, and you're going to have lots of room gain.
It's 12 by 12 by what, like 8? Is that right?
Something like that.
It's a fairly tiny. I mean, I think you could probably get away with
SB1000s.
I would.
Good.
I think you could do that just fine. I mean, yes, you wouldn't get quite as low extension as you would have gotten if you. But who cares? You're still getting 20 hertz.
Well, I mean, but he really wants the. You know, this has been a dream. He's been working towards this for months at this point. I mean, if you're just looking for any excuse, well, first of all, if that Memorial Day sale is still going on, the pair of SB2000s might be a little bit cheaper than they normally are. That would be one thing in your favor.
If footprint is the issue, then you could look at the cylinders, and then you get.
But that doesn't help you on price.
Doesn't help you on price. No.
In fact, makes the price higher.
That's right.
SB2000s, we know they will physically fit easier. They are just physically smaller, and. Yeah, if you're looking for just something to as an excuse in your mind, it's like, yeah, they actually do still produce sound to a lower frequency than the PB1000s do. So if that's enough for you to get past the price difference, I'll hand that to you, sir. On a
so if you can't get past the price difference, then and you're asking yourself, can I, am I still going to get good bass with the SB1000? The answer is yes. Corner load those bad boys, Put them in opposing corners, get a little bit more extra room gain out of them. You're going to be pleased as punch. All right, you're going to be pleased as punch with those things. If you really, if you're like, I need to get all of the output I can, and I stretch my budget just as little as possible, the SB2000s is
and definitely check out the outlet store. Because a little scratch on the underside or something like that could save you $100 or something. So.
But if you're like, if I'm going to spend more, let's get the best bang for the buck I could possibly get. PC 2000s, man, you freaking crush this room.
Yes, you would.
You would flex the walls. All right, Adam. Adam picked up an LG C8 OLED about a month ago. His plan was to use it for about 200 hours and then hire a professional calibrator. But just setting the picture mode to ISF Dark or Cinema for Dolby Vision, he thinks it already looks pretty great. And we keep saying how close TVs get to the calibration standards right out of the box these days. So would it really be worth the money to get professional calibration? Would he actually notice a difference? Well, if you have a good calibrator, they should make sure you notice a difference. They should take you in and say, this is what it looked like when you gave it to me, and this is what it looks like now. And you'll see the difference. There'll be a difference there. Will you notice it? I mean, I would hope that in that exact scenario you would. Will you think that you got your however many hundreds of dollars worth out of it? My guess is you won't.
I mean, I come back to, Adam, have you ever had a display professionally calibrated? Because if you never have, I really do think it is worth having it done at least once in your life. And I mean, certainly this is a display that you can justify. You're going to make this thing look bang on, because so it is the case that the C8 OLED straight out of the box, you put it in ISF dark mode and it's like, you are close enough to the standards just having done that you could say, well, I mean, if I have a delta error larger than 3, it is barely larger than 3 in any parameter, be that color accuracy or grayscale accuracy.
Right.
I mean, it's really close, but it can be made even more accurate. You can, I mean, very often what you'll find is some particular C8 units have a little bit too much red or not quite enough red in the brightest parts of the images, or a little bit too much blue or not quite enough blue in the brightest parts of the images. And it's really hard to spot that just by eye if you've never seen a completely professionally calibrated display, but you might have a little bit of a yellow tint or a little bit of a magenta tint that you're not really picking up. It's that type of thing. It's subtle. You are not miles away at all. You are really close to the standards, but it can be made even better. I'd basically say if you've never had a professional calibration, it could be worth it.
And I'm going to say that after you've spent the money on this thing, you're going to say to yourself, I'm never doing that again.
But you can now use your professionally calibrated C8 as a reference to see how close all other displays
until you start reading stuff and they say you should have it recalibrated every year because of the backlights.
That really doesn't seem to be the case. All the long-term tests on OLED so far are like, yeah, these things just stay exceedingly consistent.
That's good. It's up to you, dude. I mean, you let us know what you end up doing. I mean, as somebody who can calibrate his own displays, I do not. As Clint, who's not only can calibrate his own displays, but reviews displays, doesn't do it so much anymore, but he used to do it. He stopped doing it because he thought that it wasn't worth his time. He's like, this thing's close enough. I mean, definitely
neither of us are saying, oh, you must. Neither of us are anywhere close to that.
No. But, you might feel like it's a worthwhile experience, in which case we'd very much like to hear back from you. Mark, the house that Mark bought a few years ago already had a theater installed. Mark wasn't thrilled with the color scheme, and he works with wood for a living, so he did the facelift, although he didn't make any huge structural changes. The existing speakers were all included in the purchase, all B&Ws, and even though he covered the existing installation with his own woodworking, the speakers are still within cubbies, with speaker grill cloth over the openings to visually hide all of the speakers. Even the sub at the back of the room has a cubby in the back wall. Jesus. Professional installers.
I don't want to see any speakers, said the owner before you.
It's just so terrible. So terrible. I mean, this is exactly what happened. Rob's exactly right. The owner said, I found my speakers that I love. I love them forever. I went to the store and I bought them. Here they are. I want you to install them into my theater, and I don't want to see them. Why would you pay all the money for B&W speakers and not want to see them? It's just ridiculous. He's pulled all the speakers as far forward as they can go while still being behind the grill cloth, and he's put some sound dampening material behind them, but he doesn't think the theater sounds particularly great. And he's quite certain the B&W speakers are capable of sounding better. Maybe. He would not mind at all if the speakers were visible, so if he finds the time and energy, would demolishing the cubbies and just having the speakers freestanding make a big improvement. Okay, so they are quite literally... Now, I can't quite figure out what's to the left and right of the center channel. Is that gear? What is that down there?
To the left and right... So, to the right of the center channel, there's a subwoofer. That's the front subwoofer.
Oh, there's a front subwoofer.
And then they've just made a dummy grill to the left to make it look
to balance it out. Okay. So there's basically with the grill cloth. There's floor standing speakers inside cubbies to the right and left of this
rear
screen.
Ported floor standing, or there's a front port on that, but
I thought there was a front port.
There is a front port on that. I think there's rear ports on those PWs.
There probably are. There probably are. I don't know.
But regardless, floor standing speakers inside cubbies, aiming straight forward, not towed in at all, because they can't be.
All right, so clearly, okay, so he's got a subwoofer in the, just to the right, between the front right speaker and the center channel, and then he's got a subwoofer at the back of the room in the back left corner.
He's pulled it out of the cubby so we can see the subwoofer, but it has a cubby in the back left corner.
It does have a cubby. Oh my gosh, it has a cubby. Why does it have to have a cubby? There's a couch.
I don't want to see my subwoofer.
All right, so there's a lot of things that are going on in this theater that I think that we could help you with. Now, the first thing that you should do is you should pull out all the three main speakers into the room, and then
should he demolish the woodworking cabinet that he the fascia that he put over what was there before?
Not yet, I think. I mean, just to hear it.
Oh, just to hear it. You're just saying let's find out if these B&W speakers can sound a lot better when they're not stuffed into cubbies.
And I would take your subwoofer that's at the front right and put it in the front right corner.
Okay.
Or I would move your subwoofer that's in the back so that it mirrors how far into the wall. Probably easier to do it that way. But
let's try pulling everything out of the cubbies for now. Yes, it'll look a little weird and things aren't exactly where they would be placed if you were to demolish things. But let's pull them out and see if they can sound better.
Right. Your couch is really close to the back wall. It's
he's got 2 rows of seats though. So
is that 2 rows of seats?
Yeah, he's got 2 rows of seats.
Okay.
So his back row is close to the back wall, but I'm sure he sits in the front row.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
All right, so that's better than what I thought it was because there's some posters there. I mean, it's kind of hard. How deep is this thing? Because it looks like it's super deep, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can see the
screen is
recessed into this black shadow box, and then that's the depth of this cubby system. It is quite. It's got to be what, 2 feet at least.
Yeah, at least. I mean, honestly, dude, I hate to say it, but I would totally tear this whole thing down.
Yeah, I would.
I mean, I don't think it's doing you any favors.
No, that center speaker, that's not helpful.
Well, I think all of them. And
all of them, yes, but particularly that center. Like, it's on the floor, and because it had to be tilted up, that means the tweeter is like, the sound from going upwards from that tweeter is banging right into some wood.
I can't even see the tweeter.
That's not the best. I mean, it's one of those B&W tweeters where it's sitting on a little ball on top of the speaker.
Oh, I can't even see it. That's how dark it is.
There it is in the shadow.
Yeah, I if it were me, I think that I would wrap my head around how I'm going to tear this whole thing down, and then maybe just save your wood fascia, except for like the holes or whatever.
Yeah, like have it like right against the screen.
Right against the screen. Yeah, right against the wall behind it. I think that it looks nice. Yeah. I like the way it looks.
Oh yeah.
But I would do that.
Yeah, pull all the speakers out, give it a try first. If you're like, oh yeah, that obviously sounds better than they were in the cubbies, then that'll help convince you. Yeah.
Now, I did sort of make a comment when you said I'm sure these speakers can sound better. B&Ws have a specific sound.
Right.
They are unapologetic about that. That is part of their their heritage.
And if you like them, you love them.
Yeah, there's just no in between. So you may not like B&W speakers. That you may be finding this out right now, but there's no way you can know if you like B&W speakers when they're set up like this. Yeah. Just no way.
Let's at least give them a fair shake first.
Yeah. All right, Jonathan, we've been saying for a while now that we think the vast majority of upward firing Atmos module effect is created by Dolby's head-related transfer function, EQ curve, and phase manipulation, as opposed to actually bouncing sound off the ceiling. But if that's the case, why does Dolby require a flat ceiling? Marketing and lies. I went through, so there is a PDF that he linked us to, and it does mention over and over again about that you don't want absorptive materials up there, and you don't want an angle.
That if you already have a drop tile ceiling, figure out where the reflections are going to be happening and replace those tiles with reflective type tiles. Yeah, they definitely talk about making the ceiling flat and reflective.
I think that's just for the psychological effect of having a bouncy thing going on, and it could very well be that marketing copy was written, or those instructions are written by somebody who was given the specifications of the speaker and told, here, write it up, and then because of course it says we're going to bounce stuff off your ceiling, which we don't think it's actually doing. But
the person who wrote that, a little bit, but I really think the lion's share is that head-related transfer function EQ. I mean, one of the better upward-firing Atmos module demonstrations that I heard was in a store that had a high ceiling with ceiling tiles and even some like exposed beams and stuff going on. It was nowhere near what Dolby specified in that white paper as being what you're supposed to have for an upward-firing module, and yet that was one of the better demonstrations of an upward firing module that I had heard up to that point. So yeah, I mean, they also still say in that white paper, the upward firing modules in certain circumstances might be superior to in-ceiling speakers, which they don't tend to really say a lot anymore in most of their marketing material, which, I mean, they were touting that at the beginning a lot, and they have sort of pulled back on saying that. It is still mentioned in this white paper. No, I'm still convinced that most of it is the head-related transfer function EQ.
Right. Grant is a longtime listener and Patreon supporter. Thank you, Grant. Appreciate that. But due to time constraints, he isn't able to listen to our episodes as they post every week, and instead he binges several episodes when time allows. He knows he can read through the show notes of each episode one at a time to find out what is covered, but is there a better, easier, faster way if he's trying to find a particular topic? Nope.
No, I am not taking on even more work to add keywords and searchable WordPress stuff. Nope, I ain't doing it.
You don't have to do that. Even if you wanted to, you could just search AVRant, the website, from the Google interface, and put in a.
Does that work well? Term. I've never really tried that. Does that work?
I mean, I've done it. I've done it.
Are we really going to be the people saying use the search? I mean, that's like
no, not our search on our website. No,
use the search people.
We are not. I mean, he's asking. I mean, other than listening to it live,
yeah,
I mean, those are your other options. I mean, we can't beam it into your brain, so no, there's really.
I mean, the show notes are there at least. Although, I mean, like if you come to the website or to YouTube, you'd have to go like into each individual episode and press Control F and look for stuff there. Right.
No, but I'm saying like when you go to Google, like just regular Google, you put avrant.com and in space it'll search just our website for specific, and that's the way I would do our search within our website. I don't know what's going on with that thing. Our website is super broken.
Basically, our answer is no, right? I mean, basically, our
unfortunately,
answer is
no. Yeah. I mean,
I'm sorry.
We do a lot. We do a lot more than a lot of people do, that's for sure. And if our podcast, it would be the easiest way if our podcast weren't so damn long. So we could either do multiple episodes, which we're not going to do. We actually remember Austin used to split them up and on YouTube.
That
and
was
stuff
helpful.
Like that.
Wouldn't mind having a producer again.
Yeah.
Anybody want to be
free time and want to get paid nothing for it? Yeah. How do you feel? How do you feel about no income, no additional income for hours of additional work?
Very little thanks. No additional income. Lots of work.
I thank you. Shut up. I thank you all the time, jerk. All right, Grant has a dedicated home theater with a 120-inch Stewart Studio Tech 16:9 screen. He's using an older JVC projector, and he'd like to upgrade to HDR. He loves the black levels of his current JVC, but would like to keep the price closer to $3,500. I think 4,000 is what the JVCs are, so that's pretty close.
That's the retail on the X790 right now, and we know AV Science sells them for $3,800.
There you go. That's pretty close, $3,500. He has considered the JVC X790, but there's also the Epson 5050UB available at a lower price. And then there are the genuine 4K resolution projectors like the $5,000 Sony or $6,000 JVC NX5. Would it be worth waiting for price drops or stretching his budget to get one of the genuine 4K models? Or could he save money by getting the Epson without feeling like he's sacrificing performance? Or is the X790 the right choice? I mean, you're the one who's got to live with this thing.
Yes.
I don't think the way projector prices have been dropping, I don't think we're that far away from having I don't know about $3,500, but $4,000 genuine 4K doesn't seem
that'll
like
come. That'll come probably by Black Friday, I'm thinking. But the thing is, the X790, out of all of the ones that you mentioned, has noticeably better black levels and higher native contrast than any of them, including JVC's own NX5. Even though it has a genuine 4K resolution chip, it actually has significantly lower contrast and higher black levels. It's one of the challenges and why the one that can get close to the X790 is much more expensive. So, yeah, I mean, I'd get the X790 in your situation. It fits very close to the budget that you want, and it's got black levels even better than the JVC you currently own. So you've gone up in contrast, better black levels, does HDR.
This whole podcast is that FOMO, right? That's all we do is FOMO. That's all we do.
That's not all we do, but it's a lot of what we do. No,
it's a lot of what we do. It's just trying to, reassure people that the purchase that they're doing is the right one.
That's fine.
Josh has all the FOMO. He's FOMO. His name is FOMO Josh. I've changed it.
It's gotten better. All right.
It's not Anaheim, not off the ledge. It's FOMO.
But not Grant. Right. I think the X790 Grant, that's where I'm going to point you.
And this is one of those things where you're like a year later, we're going to be suggesting something completely different.
Yes.
You're like, dude, how come I didn't hear about that? But it wasn't there. It wasn't available.
It's okay. We don't have to see those comments on YouTube anymore. It's all right.
That's right. So he has an older Apple TV and the Roku Stick as his streaming devices. He uses the Roku Stick in a different room. It is plugged directly into a TV, and the TV feeds audio to an AV receiver versus audio return channel, or better known as ARC. This works well for streaming Netflix and Amazon Prime Video, but he has video files stored on his Synology NAS, and when he tries to play those, the audio often doesn't work. When he plays those same files using his Oppo Blu-ray player, they work just fine. So we're replacing his Roku Stick with an NVIDIA Shield solve his problem, or is it because of the audio return channel? I'm guessing that's the audio return channel.
Yeah, well, I think it's both, actually.
Because how old he said it was an older Apple TV, but it's also an older Roku Stick.
Well, I mean, the Roku Stick, regardless, isn't able to output lossless audio of any type, and I think that's what's going on here. I think these are backed up files on an NAS that he's trying to play, and regular ARC will not pass lossless audio of any kind. That'll be limited to Dolby Digital 5.1 or DTS 5.1 or stereo PCM audio. But that's why some files might work, because maybe, you know, if you backed up a DVD, it's going to be Dolby Digital 5.1. That'll go through the Roku Stick and ARC just fine. But if you backed up a Blu-ray with lossless audio, that's not going to work. But the Oppo Blu-ray player can play lossless audio, and that's why it works on that device. Now, if you were to just get an NVIDIA Shield and plug it directly into your TV and still use ARC, it's still not going to work. ARC is still going to limit you.
I mean, why would you do that? You could plug it right into the receiver.
You can plug the Shield right into the receiver. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's a really old receiver that doesn't have HDMI inputs. Oh, no, it's ARC, so it must.
It's got to, yeah.
Is it maybe a resolution thing? I'm not sure. But in any case, yeah, I mean, you could try plugging the Roku Stick. Well, the Roku Stick plugged directly into AV receiver isn't going to make a difference, because the Roku Stick is also limited to Dolby Digital 5.1 and DTS 5.1. So if it's lossless audio, it's not going to work through the device or through ARC.
So you have to either somehow select when it's streaming to get a lossy 5.1, if you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, what would happen here, because he never mentioned Plex. And Plex can run directly. Your Synology NAS can act as a Plex server. There is a Plex server program for Synology NAS units. So you can turn your Synology NAS into a Plex server. You can load Plex onto your Roku or onto your older Apple TV, and now it will transcode. Like, if the only audio in your file is lossless audio, Plex will transcode that for you on the fly to something that your Roku Stick can handle. So
see, that seems to me to be the best option.
That doesn't cost you anything, because that's all free Plex software. But it does mean, you know, changing into a new interface and getting used to Plex. But that can do it without you buying anything. It will transcode lossless audio into the lossy format.
NVIDIA Shield's what, like $200-300? So I mean, we're talking a significant difference in price.
And even there, you'd probably want to end up using it for Plex, because that's sort of the best way to get lossless audio.
You're right back at Plex anyway.
You're back to Plex anyway. So it's either Plex with what you have and transcoding the audio into a format that does work, or, you could add an NVIDIA Shield, but just plug it straight into your AV receiver, and you probably want to run Plex on that too to get the lossless audio out of it.
So what we recommend is the best streaming box, including the ability to play video files from his NAS. Well, I mean, you can... we just said it. You can just turn your video files. You just do the Plex.
You can do it directly with what you already own.
Yeah, what you already own.
But if he wants a new streaming box, I mean, maybe he's going to put a new streaming box in his theater or something like that.
I mean, the Shield is a great option.
The Shield is a great option. It doesn't do Dolby Vision, but you're talking about a projector, so I wouldn't be worried about Dolby Vision on that. It will play HDR and Atmos audio from Netflix. You know, so you won't get Dolby Vision, but again, projector wouldn't matter if it's going in your theater. Let's see, Amazon Prime, it's not the best player for that. I think you're actually still limited to stereo audio on the NVIDIA Shield.
I'll be honest with you, dude. You're not missing much. Amazon Prime kind of sucks.
For Plex, it's fantastic. I mean, overall, if someone were saying, what's the one streaming box that you would point me to, I would probably point most people to an Apple TV 4K, because for everything except two things, everything except YouTube, because the Apple TV 4K is horrible for a YouTube streamer, doesn't do HDR, doesn't do 5.1 audio, doesn't actually even do 4K. So it's not a good choice for YouTube if that's important to you. It is also not able to use either the Plex app or the Infuse app to play back Atmos or DTS X from a Plex server. It can play lossless True HD or DTS HD master audio if you use the Infuse app on the Apple TV 4K, but they haven't got it working with Atmos and DTS X streams yet, if you're talking about it as a Plex playback device. Does he even have
that? Does he even have Atmos?
I mean, certainly not in this second room.
Right.
So Apple TV 4K probably
works good for you. And plus, he's already kind of used to that with that. He's got a current Apple TV.
And it's actually, I mean, ironically, it's the best.
But again,
Amazon
you're
Prime
still going to have to add something to it, you know, Plex or Infuse or whatever. So you're still getting used to a different interface. I just keep what you got and get the
add a Plex server onto your existing Synology NAS and let it transcode.
All right, Rob, different Rob, not this one here, even though this Rob is also in Canada.
That is
He
true.
knows we've suggested Gibby's Electronic Supermarket as a good Canadian option for getting B-stock AV receivers that come with manufacturer's warranties similar to what Accessories for Less offers for U.S. customers. But they only seem to carry the now all Sound United brands, which includes, of course, almost everything that's out there, including Denon, Marantz, Onkyo, Pioneer, Integra.
Pioneer Elite. Yep.
I don't know why you'd buy one of those, but whatever. But what if you want B-stock Yamaha receiver in Canada, which is like the only other option out there?
It kind of is.
I mean, you can still find deals that are that have full warranty. I mean, not used or anything on like Amazon. I can't believe that doesn't come up every once in a while on Amazon, right?
Yeah. I mean, Amazon actually might be, Amazon.ca might be your best option if it's a Yamaha that you want. I mean, to answer, is there like a site that's akin to Accessories for Less for Canada for Yamaha B-stock? Not that I'm aware of. If there is, I don't know about it. I point people over to Gibby's because they have a close relationship with Denon and Marantz, and they get their B-stock units just like Accessories for Less does, but for the Canadian market. For Yamaha, I'm not aware of something that's exactly that. So if you're looking for deals on Yamaha receivers, Amazon.ca is a very good place to check. Also, 2001 audio video. So it's the numerals 2001 audio video. That's a Canadian website. They very often have good deals on all the products they sell, but that includes Yamaha receivers. Because other than that, you're looking at retail chain stores. Visions will haggle. So it's never a bad idea if you have a Visions near you to go in there and see if you can haggle the price down, because they absolutely will. But then Best Buy and Audio Video Unlimited are the other places to get Yamaha receivers in Canada, and those are just chain retail stores. So yeah, check out Amazon.ca, check out 2001 Audio Video, but as far as something exactly like Accessories for Less for Yamaha in Canada, I don't know of it.
All right. Chris has his dedicated room acoustically treated with absorption panels and big soft couch. So what about diffusion? Pre-made diffusion panels that you can buy all seem kind of expensive. Are there DIY plans that we would recommend? So diffusion, it depends. I mean, you don't even really need a DIY plan. You can just get a bookshelf, put a bunch of books on it that are different sizes, or pull some of them out randomly, and that's diffusion. I mean, it is a type of diffusion. But real diffusers, one of the reasons why they're expensive is because there's a lot of mathematics involved, making sure that you're getting the, doesn't, I'm not all of them.
It's not super complicated, and plans are out there.
I mean, construction-wise, I'm sure they exist. Construction-wise, they're a lot more involved than something like an absorption panel, which is basically just throw some cloth
insulation
over some insulation, and that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want quadratic diffusers, which are sort of the more predictable ones, there's sort of two types. There's ones that they call a skyline quadratic diffuser, which is basically you cut yourself a bunch of 1-inch, 2-inch, 4-inch, 6-inch, maybe even 8-inch long things out of 2x2s, and there's a pattern that you can follow. In fact, if you just Google skyline diffuser, there's a chart that'll come right up with the pattern of where you want to place these varying heights of 2x2s that you've cut to these various lengths. So you can make yourself that, but it ends up being thick and heavy. It's a lot of weight that's on that. So if you want also a quadratic diffuser that uses basically indents instead of protrusions, there are plans for that. You build yourself a frame, you make yourself some 1/4-inch slats. Usually you want to make it about 12 or 12.5 inches deep, the entire depth of this frame with these slats in it, and then you cut strips that you place into those slats at 1-inch, 2-inch, 4-inch, 6-inch, and 8-inch depths. And basically you make it mirrored, right? You make the outside edges like the farthest protrusion out, so those would be like the 8-inch ones if you're doing the skyline, or on the outside, or the 1-inch deep things would be on the outsides, and then it just sort of mirrors its way in.
I cannot picture what you're saying at all.
That's okay. I'm showing some images. But in any case, if you want to look up some plans, there is a link I can send you to. It'll be easiest if you just come to avrant.com when it's working, or YouTube and click the link. But it's bettersoundproofing.com, and their DIY sound diffuser section. They just link out to a whole bunch of other plans, but they are either this skyline or this framed quadratic diffuser type of...
I like the way the skyline ones look.
Sure.
They looked They look really good. Oh, I see.
But it's a bit labor intensive to put it together because there's a lot of cuts and a lot of gluing or securing these things. And then it's very heavy. It's very big and heavy. So that's just to be aware of.
All right, here's sort of a rule of thumb. A recommendation would have about 30% of the room's surface area covered in absorption. What about diffusion? Is there a similar percentage he should aim for? I don't know that I ever heard of a diffusion amount that you need.
It's very room and position, and you probably want to measure it dependent.
Yeah, like Gene used to have, I don't think he still has it. He used to have a diffusion above his couch because Oralex said that's where they were going to put it, so they did. And I think he ended up taking it down because he didn't like it. He didn't like the way it sounded. And, I mean, they're the experts. I mean, they really are quite literally the experts. And he still ended up not liking it. Now, he may have it up, and he may have made some adjustments that made that diffusion work. I'll be honest with you, I have never walked into a room and thought, you know what this room needs? Diffusion. I've just never really thought that.
It's when you're looking at the measurements, because what this is all about are decay times. You want to be looking at the waterfall plots, the waterfall graphs of a measurement of a full frequency sweep from 20 hertz up to 20 kilohertz. And what we're hoping to see are quite even decay times across all frequencies, although we expect to see gradually longer and longer decay times as we get into the bass. But it should be like a gradual, not very steep slope coming forward in these sort of mountainous looking graphs as you go into the bass. And it shouldn't be a bunch of jaggies anywhere along.
Right.
And so if you're seeing some jaggies in the decay times in your mid-range frequencies in particular are upwards of maybe about 4 or 5 kilohertz, because that's about where diffusers stop being effective. If you are seeing jaggies in that area, then diffusion could help you, because absorption won't help you very much at frequencies that high, and diffusion should. It can and should. But because we're talking about much more directional frequencies at that point, exactly where you place your diffusion is very important. And so there can't really be an easy percentage rule of thumb. You sort of have to look at the measurements, discover whether or not you have oddities in your decay times in the mid-range frequencies. And if you do, then you need to judiciously place your diffusion at the reflection points. Very often it is your ceiling that is causing a lot of the problems. So, the idea of diffusion on your ceiling at the reflection point is quite common.
Right. Which didn't make any sense why the diffusion was... Well, I guess it may have been a little bit in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
But...
sometimes they put it as a cloud directly above your head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. So when he looks at pre-made diffusion panels, they typically list the frequency ranges. There are a particular frequency range you should be looking at to target with diffusion. Again, like Rob just said, it kind of has to... It's depending on your room and what problems you're actually having. I mean, it's not going to be effective, above 4K, like Rob just said, and it's also not effective down low.
Yeah.
So it's going to be in those upper mid-range,
I mean, basically, you're looking at 4 or 5 kilohertz sort of regardless, unless it's some really strange design. For example, sometimes they just call a half of a cylinder. Sometimes that'll be referred to as a diffuser, but it's not. I mean, it kind of scatters the sound a little bit, like more than just a flat panel does.
Yes, it does. I mean, it's cylinder. Yeah, I mean, half of a cylinder. Yeah, I mean, it does.
But it's not that particular type of thing being called a diffuser isn't effective above about 15 kilohertz or so, or 1500 hertz, like 1.5 kilohertz. So. But if it's one of these skyline or quadratic frame diffusers, they're right around 4 or 5 kilohertz is where they cut off regardless. And then the deeper they are, the lower down in frequency they'll affect things. So basically, you sort of want to look at your range and you're saying, okay, well, I have some stuff going down into, say, 800 or 900 hertz where my absorbers aren't doing a ton and a thinner diffusion panel isn't going to do anything, then I need to make myself a very deep diffuser to try and address that. So again, you need the measurements to tell you.
Yeah. Jim, sometimes subwoofers have a single input jack. Sometimes subs have a left, right, red, and white pair of input jacks, and sometimes they have all three. A red and white pair plus a third labeled LFE. Jim assumes that if a sub has 3 input jacks with one of them specifically labeled LFE, then the red and white pair are probably affected by the crossover knob, while the third dedicated LFE input jack bypasses the crossover knob. Correct? I don't think so.
I wouldn't just blindly make that assumption.
No,
it very well could be the case.
You would have to read your manual
Yes,
to know
you'd
for
have to read your
sure,
manual.
but many of the times, all three of those things are exactly
All
the
just
same.
connect to each other inside.
They all
Yeah.
connect to each other inside. So, and the input, sometimes the input and the output are all the same.
Yep. Sometimes it's all just wired together behind that little panel.
He says, but what about subs only have a pair of red and white input jacks, but one of them is labeled for double duty? They're both the same. They're both the same. They might as well. For example, on several clip subs, the red input jack is labeled R, but the white input jack is labeled L/LFE. And it's the reverse on the several SVS subs. The white is labeled L, the red is labeled R, and also LFE. So what's going on? They're all wired together. There's no point in having a stereo connection back there. It's just, I mean, the parts are just, well, we've got this is the amp we bought, or this is the amp we're using, or
it's if you're connecting a stereo preamp or integrated amp that all you have is front, left, and right. So yeah, you plug them both in. But furthermore, if you look at in the case of the Klipsch, it's labeled as the low pass knob, right? That is your crossover knob, but it's labeled as the low pass knob. But if you turned it all the way clockwise as far as it goes, it's marked LFE. So at that point, it is bypassing the internal crossover. And if you plug it into either the red or the white plug, you have bypassed it, and it's in just crossover bypass mode, LFE mode. And on the SVS sub, they have, where does it say, low pass filter it's labeled as, and if you turned it all the way clockwise, it's labeled LFE. So that's all you do.
Don't worry about
you turn the crossover knob.
Nick says he's been patiently waiting for the price of the 13-channel Denon X8500H to come down, as he has it in mind that he'd like to install more than 11 speakers. But even over at Accessories for Less, the price hasn't dropped significantly yet. And I think we're still a little ways away from that. It's kind of new, isn't it?
Well, interestingly, at Gibby's in Canada, the price has gone down to 3,000 Canadian for a B stock X8500H,
which is like 2,500 for us, something like that.
It's like $22.50 basically American dollar to drive across the border, pick one up.
He says, and if the 16-channel monoprice monolith HTP1 processor comes out when they are hoping to launch it at the end of September, that will be another potential option, though he will also need to buy some external amps. Naturally, he could pay a lot less and get an 11-channel receiver right now, and there are a few other wrinkles to consider, such as the fact that the monoprice HTP1 doesn't have any sort of on-screen display. All setup has to be done on a laptop. It offers Dirac, which might be a plus. But they also confirmed that it won't cross-pollinate when it comes to up-mixing. Dolby signals have to use a Dolby surround up-mixer. DTS signals have to use a DTS Neural X. That seems to be ubiquitous right now, though.
Well, I mean, that was Dolby's decree, so...
Yeah,
anything new is doing things that way, but the X8500H was old enough that it still cross-pollinates.
Yeah. So that means he has to hope it eventually gets a DTS X Pro update if he ever wants to play any DTS signals using more than 11 speakers. So decisions. Can we talk through our thoughts on this? Will the extra 2 channels of the X8500H really be worth it over, say, an X4500H? Would the extra 4 channels on the HTP1 be even worth more money, and the risk of taking a chance on an unknown platform?
I kind of like, how big is your seating area? That's kind of what it...
I mean,
like, as for the 6 overhead speakers, I'm kind of, how big is your seating area? If it's 1 row, you definitely only need 4.
Yeah.
If it's 2 rows, it's really questionable, but I'd be very fine with 4. If you've got 3 rows of seating, I'm like, yeah, maybe I want 6 overhead speakers at that point. But that's about what it would take for me to really say I needs me some 6 overhead speakers.
Yeah, chances are this dude's got 1 row of
I know he told us at one point, so I apologize, Nick, that we've forgotten at this point. But that still stands. How many rows do you have? If it's 1 or 2, I'm like, I don't really think you need 6 overheads. I think 4 is just fine if you got 1 or 2 rows of seats. Now, front wides, I mean, everybody knows who's listened to this podcast for any length of time, I am the advocate for front wide speakers. I like them. You would need an upgrade to DTS X Pro in order for that to even be involved in DTS upmixing for the most part, because otherwise you have to say that it's, well, I guess you could say it's 7.2.4 plus front wides. I guess that's allowable. No, that doesn't work. 5.2.4 plus front wides, because it has to top out at 11. So yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky.
Yeah, I don't. You know how you guys know how I feel about Atmos in general. I think it's sort of a meh thing anyway. So spending all this money to get extra speakers up there, even with 3 rows of seats, I still have a harder time understanding where exactly you're going to center the middle channels at. You know what I'm saying? Do you center them at the seat you normally sit at, and then the overheads are somehow weird for everybody else, or do you have 4 speakers up there, 2 that are in front of all the chairs and 2 that are in behind all the chairs,
and then 2 that are over the middle row, basically?
Yeah, or 2. I mean, or you just have the 4.
It would be that, because it's all about steering sounds. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, but I mean, your top middles are supposed to be above your head. I mean, that's where they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be in line with you. So if you're not sitting in the middle,
they're supposed to be over the middle of the seating area. That's where they're supposed to go.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
That's where top middles go. They go over the middle of the seating area.
No, I understand that.
So
but I mean,
if
I paid to put 6 speakers above, top middles go over my head. I sit in the first row. Where do I put them now?
Well, I guess you would experiment before you lock in your decision on that. But
so I don't know. To me, it's questionable whether or not you need to do this at all. In fact,
I mean, that's where he's at now. He's like, for under $1,000, he can get himself one that does 11. He can get that right now very affordably. Does he wait until he can afford the 13-channel one to, let's say, add front wides? Maybe he's going to keep 4 overheads, but he'll add front wides. Or does he even consider the 15-channel HTP one so he can have front wides and
sounds like this man's gone down the rabbit hole as well, and I can feel your pain, with him. Man. Yeah, and I can understand where you're coming from here. Just ask yourself if it's really something that you think is necessary or something that it would be nice to have. And if you haven't already experienced Atmos, if you have not, then I think that you should go with the X4500H.
Yeah, much more affordable. You can do 11 speakers right this second and get a I mean, that is a full Atmos experience. No ifs, ands, or buts. And if it rocks your world and you're like, man, I wish I had even more speakers, well, then there you go. I mean, you can sell an X4500H for a very reasonable return on your price, because people are looking to buy that thing.
Right, and you can live with it for a couple of years until the prices of all the rest of the stuff comes down. And then
if what you really want are 2 more overhead speakers, you can buy 2 inexpensive ProLogic receivers, have yourself 3 receivers, and make yourself 6 overheads that way.
Because that's not crazy. Nick would like to confirm before he makes a purchase. We recommend a UMic 1 and Room EQ Wizard for taking measurements in his room, correct? Should he consider one of the microphones that plugs directly into a tablet or smartphone, plus the associated software for that? No, you should go to Cross Spectrum Labs and order one from Herb.
Yes, you should.
So yes, that'll get you
individually calibrated UMic 1 from Cross Spectrum Labs. Yeah, and Room EQ Wizard is free.
And that will go into, it's a USB mic that'll plug directly into your computer. So that's what you want.
That is what you want.
Carl. Wow, I guess my voice is changing. I'm going to be a man someday. Carl, we talked about very last Blockbuster video store a while back, and of course there's also still a handful of independent video rental stores scattered around the U.S., and there's a niche crowd of movie lovers and physical media lovers who want to see them stay afloat. Some of them have taken to setting up crowdsourcing donation pages, such as Vulcan Video in Austin, Texas, on GoFundMe. So if you're in Austin, Texas, Vulcan Video. What are our thoughts on video rental stores relying on donations in order to remain open for business? I mean, hey, if somebody wants to donate to you so that you stay open, I mean, you take the money where you can get it, Haas.
It's hard to justify that as a sustainable business model.
But as long as it lasts, I mean, as long as nostalgia keeps you afloat, then fine. I miss video rental stores, and I know I could change my Netflix subscription so I could get discs again, and I don't wanna.
I still don't think Netflix does Ultra HD Blu-rays by mail. I still don't think they do that. You can go to Rent 4K to get discs by mail, 4K discs by mail, but
but whatever. I miss the ability to say I want to see Doctor Strange or whatever or something, and going to the video store and picking it up. Yeah, I missed that.
But how much worse is the Apple TV 4K version? You know? Well, actually, in the case of Disney, it is significantly worse because it's not 4K because they don't put 4K on Apple's streaming. But bad example, some other movie that isn't from Disney that you could get in 4K and HDR.
Well, the problem I've had is like I seem to remember renting movies used to be $3 or $4, right?
There was that, or about $5. Yeah.
I never paid $5. Streaming movies.
Oh yeah, just to rent it. Yeah,
is really expensive. It seems.
Yeah, like $5.99 seems to be the average.
I don't want to pay that much for that. Like, every time I'm like, oh, my wife wants to see, XYZ, and we don't have it, and you can't get it at Redbox, so I'll go stream it. $6. I ain't paying $6. I mean, for $10, I could buy the disc. I just have to wait a couple of days for it to come in. I just prices don't seem to make sense to me for streaming. So I do miss my rental places. Yeah. And there was a place in San Francisco that specialized. This was way back in the day when I was in college, and it was VHS, all VHS back then. And, they specialized on imports, and you could get like, the Better Tomorrow movies and all the early John Woo stuff and Jackie Chan stuff that no one knew about except for us, and felt very cool.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, they only have this niche crowd, and I mean, if you were a traditional business model, you'd say, well, we have a small crowd of people, and the only way to stay afloat is to raise our prices and hope that they stick with us. So instead of doing that, they're like, well, if you just donate, I mean, you literally don't even get a rental. You just give us money because you want us to stay open. Yeah, I guess I'm like Tom. If that works, okay, but I don't see it as being sustainable, unfortunately. So
yeah. Happens. All right, Tap on Twitter. Since Tap's projector plans are on hold for the moment, he'd like to get the 65-inch flat panel for under $1,000 to tide him over. He'll be using Google Assistant throughout his house, so he'd like that TV. He'd like a TV that would work with that if possible. Suggestions. I don't know what works with Google Assistant, but I mean,
so as far as Google Assistant actually built into the TV, you'd be looking at Sony or LG for the most part right now.
Yeah, but those are going to be expensive.
But
more expensive than $1,000 for 65 inches.
Yeah, for a really nice one from Sony or LG, that's 65 inches. It'll be over $1,000. To get a 65-inch under $1,000 from those brands, it's like it's IPS panels, it's edge lighting, and I'm like, you're giving up a lot just to have Google Assistant built in.
I don't think TCL makes 65 inches anymore, right?
Well, they make 65 inches, but they're Roku built in. They're not Google Assistant.
Okay.
Vizio. Vizio is what I would point you to because you can definitely get a 65-incher for $1,000. You can get the brand new 65-inch M Series Quantum for $1,000 if you wanted that. But you can get last year's Vizio P Series at the 65-inch size for $1,000 right now. And last year's P Series does still have more local dimming zones and higher peak brightness than 2019's M Series Quantum. So I would go for the P Series right now. Now, the thing is, they don't have the Google Assistant actually built into the TV, but because SmartCast, which is Vizio's operating system, is based entirely on Chromecast from Google, and it is built to work with the Google Assistant as long as you have something like a Google Home, an external microphone device. That's the thing you actually talk to. So you need an external device that has the Google Assistant in it, but it's programmed to work with the Google Assistant, the Vizio TVs are. So,
and then, I mean, I guess technically you could get a Harmony or a Harmony Hub or whatever, and it would do the same thing.
Harmony mostly works with She Who Shall Not Be Named from Amazon. I don't know if it takes commands from Google Assistant yet.
I can't believe it doesn't take them.
I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. They were very closely tied to the A Lady.
We'll see.
Yeah. But the Vizio, the Vizios are nice, full array local dimming. I'd get a P Series from 2018, and that'd be that.
All right, Tom K, not me, the different dude, has an open concept room. He's worked out that he's dealing with roughly 5,000 cubic feet of air. Going by Audioholic's Bassaholic room size guide, he was thinking a pair of SVS PC 2000 subs would do the trick. 5,000 cubic feet.
Well, keep on reading.
Okay, but when you're selecting a subwoofer model for a given room size, is that strictly just about having enough output to hit full reference volume? What if you never listen at full reference volume? Could you save some money and get lower output subs? Or is there something else besides just volume level that needs to be considered? So, yeah. I don't know that PC 2000s in a 5,000, I mean, I think you'd be pushing it right there.
You'd be pushing it. Yeah, I mean, if your goal were to hit full reference volume right down at 20 hertz, I'd be edging you up to a 3,000 ported sub. You know, if you're sticking in the SBS lineup.
When you're looking at room size, you know, this volume of air, the idea is to move all the air in the room. And,
displace. We are trying to displace the fluid that is the air. Yeah,
that is the air, and it is for volume level. I mean, that's what it's for. It's just to get it, you know, so that when you say play this loud, you can play this loud.
Yeah, I mean, reference level is a sound pressure level, so we are just attempting to reach that pressure level. But I mean, if you look at the frequency response of any subwoofer, you know, it peaks its maximum output capability, usually around 50, 60 hertz, something like that. And then it starts to, I mean, even the ported subs, there's a little bit of gradual decrease in its absolute peak maximum output as you get lower and lower in frequency. So we tend to, I mean, the Bassaholics guide isn't even looking at 20 hertz, right? That wasn't that one looking at 25 or 30 hertz or something?
I think so, yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah, and we here at AVRant, we're like, oh no, we're looking at 20 hertz. We want to hit full reference volume, which by the way doesn't have to be 115 decibels. Full reference volume calls for anything even slightly above 110 decibels is full reference volume. So we're looking for that at 20 hertz if what we're worried about is full reference volume. And yeah, that is just pure sound pressure level. That's just pure volume output at 20 hertz. Can the sub do it or not in that amount of air? But yeah, if you know for a fact you never ever listen at full reference volume, you just have to know, well, what sound pressure level do I need to achieve? And then you get the sub that can do that.
In your volume of air.
In your volume.
So, right. So we get this question. We do get this question a lot in different ways, which is, you know, I never listen to it very loud, so can I get this bass module?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, we get all the time. We're like, well, I'll put it close to your couch, and maybe you'll kind of sort of feel it's there or whatever. You know, and you may not want to, because there's stairs in this room, so it's not really an L-shaped room. It's sort of, it's got like a,
it's a little bit T-shaped.
Like a long, it's a long rectangle with halfway down the, you know, one of the long walls, there's some stairs, and it looks like a back area. I don't know what that is. Maybe another hallway or something that
it's
has
like
doors
13 and a half feet wide and 36 and a half feet long, so it's a long, narrow room.
If you're looking at stairs, if there's no door anywhere, then you better have calculated everything that was up there as well. So maybe that 5,000 cubic feet is not even
just became
correct.
10 or 15,000 potentially up those stairs. Yep.
Right. And a lot of times in rooms like this, you don't, not only do you not want to pressurize, you may not be interested in getting even close to, you know, full reference volume in any form, because you're going to be disturbing everybody else in the house when you do so. So, you know, that's completely understandable. And buying smaller subs, sure, that's one way to do that. Buying the correct sub and then not turning it up as loud, that also works.
Yep.
You know, so there's other ways to do it. You know, what you don't want is you don't want to buy a sub. This, in my opinion, you don't want to buy a sub that when you ask it to play at a certain volume that you are comfortable with, it can't do it.
Or it attempts to play even louder because that's what the signal is calling for, and ends up distorting or bottoming out as a result of that.
Right. Damaging itself, making unwanted noises, distortion, that sort of thing. So you want something that's capable of playing the volume level that you're going to require. And but I don't know what that is.
Like we often mention, you know, the SVS subs are a really nice choice, because even if you ask them to play louder than they can, they just politely refuse. That DSP control keeps them well under control. They'll never bottom out, and the distortion levels don't even get super high. It just prevents itself from playing that loud.
So, okay, he says he has a Sony DH820 receiver. Okay, and it displays the volume in all positive numbers from 0 to 75. He read the entire manual. Doesn't seem to be any mention of which number would correspond to reference volume.
That is true. I couldn't find a single mention of it.
I would have to. I mean, did you Google it? Because that's the first
I looked up. I read through the manual. I couldn't find any mention of what number.
Well, I'm not even talking about the manual. I mean, it may be in the FAQ someplace on their website.
No,
too.
I didn't try that.
No. I would Google it for sure. He says if he manually sets all his speaker trim levels to 0, he can play the speaker level test tones, and they get louder and quieter depending on where he sets the master volume dial. If he measures with the SPL meter and keeps the trim levels set to 0, his master volume dial ends up at 52 in order to get a reading at 75 dB on his SPL meter, at least from his front left-right speaker. So is that reference volume? No. And just to give us an idea,
although I mean, it kind of is for him now.
But reference volume is really 85 dB anyways. So, I mean,
well,
we
no, but I
measure
mean,
at
the
75.
test tones are supposed to be calibrated
Right.
to be negative 30 dB from full scale. So
Right.
that should be reading at 75. So, I mean, you've kind of backed into calibrating your system so that if you remember that 52 equals 75 dB, you kind of have landed on a reference volume for your particular setup. Yeah.
No.
It's kind of right.
Kind of. But we don't know that that's where it thinks full reference
That's right.
volume is.
Yes. Yeah.
So just to give us an idea, with his trim level set that way, he never has the master volume above 30 when he's listening to actual content. So again, could something like dual PB 1000, geez, he's going smaller.
He's going smaller than 2000s.
For him, even in his large open room, given his low volume levels. Dude, actual content doesn't tell us anything. Actual content tells us nothing. I don't listen to full reference volume with YouTube. I'm like at negative
not.
30.
Yeah.
You know, because it's too freaking loud. You know, I don't listen to full reference volume with Hulu. I'm at negative 12.
Yeah.
Negative 15.
I mean,
negative 20.
If he were at reference volume and, you know, his setup, the way he sort of backed into it there, then he'd basically have his volume at negative 22. That seems to be where, you know, like I'm assuming for cable TV and movies and stuff, right? And
that's because a lot of this stuff is mixed pretty hot. And then even with DVDs and Blu-rays, like we watched Moulin Rouge this weekend.
Ones, right? Yeah.
The DTS mix on the Moulin Rouge disc, I was at negative 2.5. That's about as close as I ever get to reference volume. That is very, 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 it was very loud in here, but it was fantastic and it was appropriate. Many discs, I am at least 10 dB lower than that. And it's just because of how they're mixed. So it doesn't tell us anything about what sort of subs that you should buy based on what you listen to or how loud.
I mean, just given his volume of air, we can tell you that if you went with PB1000s, they are not capable of getting you full reference volume in the volume of air that you've already described. You could entirely request of them with a given signal that they play louder than they're capable, at which point they will politely refuse to do so, and that's okay. Right. So, I mean, honestly, I mean, PB1000s are a lot bigger than most people would ever, like, you know, not AVRant listeners, but most actual normal people out there in the world.
If you're worried about footprint, dude, you should be getting the PC2000s.
There's that, but they cost more. That's the thing. They
do, more. But they'd also be more capable.
I mean, both of us are like, can you get PC2000s? Because it's more appropriate. It's got the nice footprint. We're sort of still leaning that way. But I mean, can we truly need some more justify it?
I can't do a Google search right now for this thing, but I guarantee you there is. And first of all, you know, you've set all your trim levels to 0. Well, now your speakers, unless they are all equal distance from you, all pointed at you at the exact same angle, or off angle or whatever. Now your speakers are individually different volumes.
Right.
You know, because some of them are closer to you, some of them are further away, and you set the trim level for all of those at 0. Well, that's no longer. I mean, obviously.
I think you would. Yeah, he's setting it by his front, left, right, and then adjusting the other trim levels as necessary.
Yeah, I would hope so, but that's not what he said. But that's fine. So, I mean, you know, there's a lot going on here as far as, you know, what's happening now. If there is a auto setup thing in here and it set everything up, and then you play test tones, and the test tones 75 dB at your seat was 52. Well, you know, that would tell me, okay, well then it thinks that reference volume is around.
I mean,
52.
it does have an auto setup, so the easiest thing to do is just use that.
Yeah, but actual content that you're listening is so crazy, and like, it's so crazy different as far as what the mixing volume is.
Yeah,
it's meaningless for us. So, I mean, we can't stop you. You get whatever subwoofers you really want to get, but I would lean much more heavily towards the PC2000.
And I have to agree.
That PP1000. Yeah. Infinite Gary. Gary has an Anthem processor, so he's used to Anthem room correction, and he thinks it sounds very good. Well, I would hope so for how much it costs. There's a lot of talk of Dirac, which a lot of people claim is also very good, but he's never heard it for himself. And let me tell you something about those Dirac people. They never heard of Anthem. So let's say that you guys are both coming from a place of ignorance about the other person, and I leave it at that. So how are they different from one another in the way that they apply correction? I mean, they both use fur filters.
No,
so
that's not true.
They're not? Is it, what is the Dirac uses fur filters?
Well, yeah, I mean, Dirac uses both. Dirac uses a combination of fur filters, finite, infinite response filters, and IIR, right? Infinite impulse response instead of finite impulse response. It uses a combination of both, whereas Anthem room correction only uses infinite impulse response filters, also known as parametric EQ filters. That's all Anthem room correction uses. So they have different types of filters. That's an objective difference between the two. Anthem room correction. So actually, you know what? Just for everybody else who wants to really get into the details, Audioholics posted a series of interviews all about room correction, different ones, you know, Odyssey and Dirac and Anthem room correction and YPOW. So we'll have links for the Anthem and the Dirac ones over at AVRant.com if you want to get into the real nitty-gritty. But like Anthem, for example, will never do any correction above 5 kilohertz, whereas Dirac, you have the option to if you want to. In Anthem system, you cannot manually change the shape of the target curve other than it gives you some presets for how much room gain you're willing to accept, how much rise in the bass you're willing to accept, but it's just sort of a bunch of presets in Anthem, whereas in Dirac, you can completely manually change the target curve to anything your heart desires. It's completely open for you to do that. So it's mainly, yeah, that target curve adjustment. Anthem will never go above 5 kilohertz, and the differences in the filters, the types of filters that they use.
So he says if you could directly A/B compare Dirac and Anthem, how would they sound different? And should they sound any different? If they're both claiming to correct the room, shouldn't all room correction programs end up sounding the same if they are effective? Well, it's all about that curve.
It's all about the target curve that they're going for, yeah.
So, you know, if Anthem has a target curve that's anything at all different than what Dirac is going for, or in the case of Dirac where you can actually change it.
Yeah, to make it the same as the Anthem target curve, which you could.
In which case, they should sound identical. They should
sound very, very similar. I mean, some of the differences in the filters, because you know, the Anthem ones it's a parametric filter. It's just reducing or slightly boosting whatever frequencies you tell it to all the time. Whereas with a finite infinite response filter, it can only boost or cut over a given period of time that is set by the filter's calculations.
Right.
So there could still be potentially.
I think it would be.
It'd be so subtle.
It would be very, very, very subtle.
Exceedingly subtle, yeah.
I would have a hard time believing that in real-world listening situations, even with an A/B box where you could flip back and forth between the two, instantaneously, I would have a hard time believing that you could, you know, with 100% accuracy, predict, you know, pick which one. I mean,
they both take multiple measurement positions, so there could be differences in the algorithm they use to average.
I think that,
right?
Yeah, there could be, yeah, sure, right there. I mean, but if we provide that each one is actually, you know, the mics are of identical quality.
Right.
The positioning is identical. You know, outside noise is identical
and the target
at the time
curve
of
has
measurements.
been made identical.
And the target curve has been made identical. Yes, I think there might be some sonic differences that are measurable, but I would imagine that it'd be very, very hard.
But if you just went by the default target curves, there might be differences there, because if they're using different target curves, then that is the difference.
Yeah, that's the difference. But you're right, Gary, in that, you know, room correction, if it's doing its job the way it's supposed to be doing its job, should sound exceedingly similar and not more similar than dissimilar.
Yeah, and you could include Odyssey in there as well, since you can also alter their target curve and how high it applies its filters in the frequency range using the Odyssey Editor app now.
So last episode, I half-jokingly remarked how Gary might be getting a monoblock amplifier to put out 1 watt. But we've, it doesn't sound like me at all. I don't know what you're talking about, Gary. I've been disparaged My own podcast. But we've also commented on the past how very low impedance speakers might be genuinely difficult for an AV receiver to drive, and how an external amp would make sense for difficult to drive speakers. So what's it really all about? Is 1 watt no longer 1 watt if you have low impedance, difficult to drive speakers? No, it's still 1 watt, Gary. It's still 1 watt, but when that impedance, it's not asking for 1 watt no more. It's asking for something a lot more than a watt in order to do what it needs to do.
The voltage in the signal has remained the same, but the impedance is lower. Therefore, it's requesting more current. And now it is greater than 1 watt. You multiply the voltage and the amperage together, and there is your wattage when divided by the ohmage.
Right, and so that's where and I still don't think you need monoblocks for difficult to drive speakers. Most difficult to drive speakers, what they need is a dedicated is an amplifier that has a lot of on-demand power, which means capacitors more than anything else. It means capacitors that can dump all that power, and then a transformer in a way to refill those things very quickly with very low noise floor. So that's what you need. And mini receivers fail on one or more of those. They have a power supply, but it's trying to fill up capacitors for all of these different things, all these different amplifiers, and it can't be quite as big, and it can't have the cooling it needs, and it doesn't have as many capacitors, and the noise floor isn't quite as good, especially when it's driving a whole bunch of speakers at the same time. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, but I think you get a good 5-channel amplifier from Monoprice or
Outlaw or Emotiva.
Outlaw or Emotiva or any of these places. You still don't need them.
Yeah, no, the joke about the 1 watt, I mean, that's because the majority of the time we're listening at like 75, maybe 80 decibels at the most, and with speakers that are 86, 87, 89 decibels efficient with 1 watt of output, it's like, even at the distance that you're sitting, 1 watt, most of the time, that's all you needed. But it's for those moments where, we're requesting 20 decibels of headroom above that. And if you were starting at, for the average listening level, we need 4 watts, because it's a really low impedance speaker. Well, now I suddenly need 400 all at once.
Right.
So that's where that comes into play. It's for those momentary loud peaks but for the majority of the time, we need very little wattage.
Lastly, he asks, have either of us really been excited about a certain AV purchase, but once we got it home, we were disappointed and wound up returning it? I got a KLH sub, in quotes, for like $100 sub that was just straight garbage.
Mine was also a sub. Remember those Epic subwoofers? I was not happy when those arrived. Not happy at all.
Yeah, so subwoofer, subwoofer, and I returned it. I returned it a couple of times, and ended up keeping one virtual. The first one didn't make any noise. The second one just distorted like crazy, and the third one was somewhere in between, and I kept that one, and it was still garbage.
I would have returned those Epic subs if it wouldn't have cost me almost as much to return them as it cost to buy them. So, that was bad.
Yeah. What time is it? Okay, we can do a couple more. Damien, I don't care, Rob. I still don't care.
There's so many.
I'm very tired. It's late at night here.
It's getting close to midnight.
It's midnight. It's midnight. I am tired, and I will stop the podcast when I can no longer read, which is very close to right now. Damien, some updates on the basement theater in this new house. His budget is tight, so the carpet is staying for now. He'll just vacuum frequently to get a Roomba to combat allergies. I hope that works, dude. I'm honestly, I'm not poking fun or anything. I really do hope that works, because if not, it's going to be a miserable time for you and your family, because that's expensive. I mean, that's expensive. It's expensive to change the stuff, but it's more expensive on your emotional state if you're sick all the dang time. Any changes to the exterior door also need to be cheap, so he appreciates the suggestion of just installing a floor-mounted door stop to prevent the door from crashing into his front left speaker. Yay. Tom's cheap solutions.
That's right.
For the win. For once. Since he already owns 5 Pioneer speakers, dual SB12 NSD subs, and a Denon X4400H, he wants to be able to use the basement as his theater immediately. He figures it might make sense to set that all up now and then consider speaker upgrades at a later time. Do we disagree? Do we think it's imperative to upgrade his speakers right away? No.
No, that's fine, dude. Your plan makes perfect sense.
Even if your room was like a cavernous and you would be sitting 25 feet away from these things and you said, I can't afford speakers right now, is it okay to set them up? I'd be like, yep, just don't turn them too loud because you might blow them up. But other than that, you'd be okay. So you still think he'll end up setting up one of his couches as a second row behind his left seat. The ceiling, even though it's a drop tile, is 8 feet high throughout this basement. So he could use a fairly low riser. Would it help at all? Could he even make it out of shipping pallets to keep the cost super low for now? I mean, shipping pallets, dude. It seems kind of sketchy as far as falling over wise. Yeah, I mean, you could make a low riser. I mean, the idea of the riser is so people can see.
So people can see. That is entirely the point. Yes. I
mean, you could see. You probably go back and find pictures of Ted's setup, which his couch is on. What is this couch on?
It's on those things that you can get for beds to raise the height of your bed.
Yeah, and it just goes right underneath the feet. So you could do that. If you want to go super cheap, you could do that. I don't think I trust pallets. I just think the whole thing's going to wobble. Somebody
they're not usually like super precise on.
I know, as far as the measurements. Yeah. Like, oh yeah. That's what I think I would do that. And really, I mean,
okay, yeah, the bed riser idea, that does make a lot of sense.
I mean, you could do like cinder blocks or something if you want to go crazy cheap.
Yeah, cinder blocks.
You could do that too. So should he install some type of sliding or bifold door over his hallway entrance so this theater will be an enclosed rectangle?
That's a pretty big opening according to the diagram. And we're talking low cost.
Yeah, because so sliding or rattling is what I'd be worried about, especially with the bifold door or a sliding door. I mean, if you you got those hanging ones, you kind of slide across the whole thing.
Right.
I mean, first of all, anything on either side of that or whatever side you're going to be sliding it from, you can have nothing on the walls, and then it's got to sit kind of flush to keep the air inside the room as much as possible, and then you also have to worry about it rattling back and forth as the subwoofers are pushing it back and forth. I'm
leaning away from that. Yeah.
So with this display on the short wall next to the exterior door, do we have any particular advice about how his front, left, and right towers and center speaker ought to be placed? He had a super awkward living room set up before, like this one's so much better. So now that he has a little bit more freedom as to where the front 3 speakers can go, he just wants to make sure he's thought it through and optimizes the situation as much as he can. I gotta look back at this thing. So
I mean, it's all just angles, right? It's all comes down to angles, and focus on your primary seat. Let's not worry too much about any other rows or beanbags or anything like that. Let's focus on your primary seat and just try to follow the angles in Dolby's speaker placement guidelines. That's really all it works out to.
And I mean, remember too that yes, in every setup you've ever seen, the front, left, and right speakers are flanking the TV and they're right next to the TV.
Too close together.
Does not have to be that way.
Nope.
And you can actually move that front left speaker out to that side wall. I know you don't want it on the side wall, but you could in front of the door. So you're looking at it. I mean, because
you're quite far back in this, at least in the diagram.
In the diagram you are. So you could actually put it right there. Now you got that speaker wire. Well, I'm going to put the speaker wire up the wall, through that drop ceiling, back down on the other side of that door. You could put that there,
or you could
put
just
the other one,
float it aiming straight back to the front wall, underneath the TV cabinet or something. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's, you don't have to have them just on either side of the TV like you've seen. You don't have to put it behind that door if you don't want to. You can put it in front of the door.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to pull speakers forward. That is entirely doable.
And not only that, I mean, they don't have to be physically in line with each other. I mean, you just set the trim level higher for the other one. You know,
so you've got an X4400H. The auto setup will do a perfectly fine job of that for you.
Yeah, so they don't have to be right across the room for each other. Like, oh, well, that's not going to work because of this. Well, then put the other one, right in the corner, right next to the TV, and call it good. It's right in front of that subwoofer is what it looks like it's going to end up going. But, you can do that.
Yeah, the thing to think through is try to follow the angles.
Right. I have whatever, and the center channel's got to go underneath or on top of your display.
Yes,
I'm sorry,
and tilted towards your face.
I have very few hard and fast rules, and putting the center channel anywhere other than the plane,
smack dab in the middle.
I just no, don't do it. Don't put it to the left or right. So we mentioned, is this right?
Yep, E.
Okay. We mentioned it would be a good idea to decouple his subwoofers and his tower speakers from the floor. He already knew about sound path isolation feet for his subs, but what could he use to decouple his speakers? What does he have?
It's Pioneer Engine Jones Towers right now, but one day he might be upgrading or something.
I mean, you can buy a platform. You want to keep it on the cheap. Rob's going to say mouse pads.
It'll work.
So you got some old mouse pads sitting around?
Yeah. I mean, anything squishy. I mean, not so squishy that it's going to make it, precarious that they're going to fall over.
That's right. So, what you're looking for is so that when the speaker is sitting on it by itself, there is play on whatever the squishy thing that's underneath it. It doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to be enough so that when the speaker is vibrating, those vibrations don't directly translate into the floor.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it.
I would be less worried about your front left and right speakers than I would be about your subwoofer.
Oh, subwoofers for sure.
Fine.
But, I mean, the towers can also... I mean, he was worried about soundproofing into his son's basement, son's bedroom that is also in this basement. So decoupling stuff is good.
If you've got old mouse pads, I'd do it. If you don't, then I would probably not.
I mean, you can use that type of shipping foam, the still squishy but fairly sturdy foam, and they just put some kind of platform on top of that. There, you've made. I mean, I used to say sub dudes, but they're so overpriced that
they've really got it up. Yeah. So up in his family room, he agrees that all of the $1,750 pair or $2,000 pair towers that he mentioned are probably a bit too expensive at the moment. He will be getting a PC 2000 sub regardless. So what do we think he should go for? Some less expensive towers from the selection we suggested last week, or should he consider similarly priced bookshelf speakers, which might allow him to get speakers from a higher end series? I have no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, so his family room is enormous, and he's sitting quite far away. And he said he preferred the look of towers anyway, and you're going to have to spend some money on stands if you go the bookshelf route. I mean, I'm kind of in favor of just going for some $1,000 a pair of towers from the selection.
Well, like the RBHs?
RBH Impression Series, not the Elites, but the regular Impression Series. SVS Prime towers. I think that'd
find some clips on sale. They'll be loud.
Yeah, he thought of that as well. I mean, it is this big, open, echoey looking room at the moment. He did say he's going to add some acoustic treatments at least to try and at least not echo. I don't know. Would Kef be in that price range, or are they a little bit more than that?
I think they're a
little bit more than that.
But we'll have to. You take a look at.
I'm almost kind of leaning towards just order it all from SVS and just get some prime towers along with your PC 2000 sub, because they don't play real nice together in there.
Yeah. All right, David. David knows monoblock amps are almost certainly overkill, but he could potentially buy a pair of first-gen Emotiva XPA1 monoblocks for $1,000 total, or $500 each for those people who cannot do the math. It's fully differential, Class A/B, 500 watt into 8 ohms, 1,000 watts into 4 ohms design. The same $1,000 could buy him a current Gen 3 XPA2 or mono-price monolith 2-channel amp, but both those are 200 watts per channel. So given the price parity, should he go for the pair of monoblocks?
Can we stop you, David? Is there any way of stopping you?
At this point, I'm still going to say, you don't need any of this.
You also need 2 dedicated 20 amp circuits to actually get that power output out of those monoblock amps.
Which you do not have. And will require a certified electrician in thousands of dollars to get into your home theater to power things you do not need.
Not that they won't work just fine on your standard 15 amp circuit, because they will, but to actually get the full rated power out of them, each monoblock needs its own dedicated 20 amp circuit, unless you have a 20 amp 230 volt service. Then you could plug 2 of them into that and get the full rated power. But I mean, given the price parity, there isn't a tremendous, I mean, other than just physical space and heat, because it's lots of both for those monoblocks.
Right.
They're 70 pounds, over 70 pounds each. What's another reason? Maybe not. The binding posts are really weird on the back of the first generation XPA1, because they put the left binding post on the left of the back of the panel and the right binding post on the right of the back of the panel.
Oh, right. You had to like split your speaker
They're 17
wire.
inches apart, so your speaker wire has to be pulled apart. It's weird.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's not really any reason not to, if you're not spending any more than you were going to spend anyway. Knock yourself out.
Just whatever. You know, some fights are not worth fighting, and me trying to convince this guy or many people not to buy amplifiers when they really want one. I want amplifiers. I think everybody needs to remember this.
Yes.
If somebody came up to me and said, Tom, here's a monoblock amplifier, would you like it? I would say yes. They say it's going to be $500. I'd say no.
Yeah. Consider the physical space. Consider the heat. Consider pulling your speaker wires 17 inches apart from each other. But if all of that's okay.
It's just so immaterial for most people. So, all right, we're doing one more, then we're done. Cesar. Cesar has a CAF Q800 speakers powered by Yamaha. What's what I said? Powered by a Yamaha RXV. I am tired.
Yes, I know.
It is past midnight. Yamaha RXV 683 receiver. For a while, he was running a Phantom Center because the matching Q200C had been discontinued for a while, and it was difficult to find one. He uses a 135-inch pull-down projection screen, and when he was running the Phantom Center, it sounded as though voices were coming right from the middle of the screen itself. But, of course, outside the sweet spot, the imaging wasn't as convincing, and the center channel could not be adjusted independently of the front, left, and right channels, because the front, left, and right channels are the ones making the Phantom Center. That's correct. So he found a Q200C and bought it. The center channel sounds clearer now, and it doesn't matter if someone is sitting outside the sweet spot anymore. But the voices seem detached from the middle of the screen now, since the center speaker is below the screen. He tried tilting the center speaker, and it helped a little, but it's just not the same as the ideal positioning that the Phantom Center provided. Is there any solution to this? Could absorption panels placed behind or around his center speaker help at all? Could the dialogue lift processing built into Yamaha's receiver work with his 2 Atmos speakers to make it seem as though the dialogue is coming right from the middle of its projection screen again? This is like more, I think, a problem with psychology than it is physicality. There's more than
that would be our expectation, because normally your brain does a good, I mean, even though it is the case that, yeah, the sound is originating from below your screen. Now, usually our brains just go, when they see the lips moving, like that's where the sound is coming from.
You could try the dialogue lift. I think that might not be a terrible idea.
Oh, I mean, give it a try. You've already got the speakers installed. You already have the Yamaha receiver, so it costs you nothing to try it. It doesn't usually work terrifically well because we don't stereo image vertically, because that's not the way our ears are positioned. But, I mean, give it a try. It's there. It's costing you nothing.
Yeah, no absorption, I think, is going to help you with this that I can think of. Does he have a hard floor?
That is the question. Could it be floor bounce, ceiling bounce being involved?
That's
in this?
The only other thing that would that absorption might, and you could just check this by taking a nice thick blanket and folding it over itself a couple of times and putting it at the first reflection point on the floor between you and your center channel. Maybe that would be my only other idea. I mean, but I think this is really more you expect it to come from that speaker, and therefore you're feeling like it's coming from the speaker.
I mean, the real for 100% sure fix is that you get yourself an acoustically transparent projection screen instead and put your center speaker behind that acoustically transparent screen at ear height. That'll for sure do it, but that's the most expensive thing we've suggested yet.
Yeah.
Usually this isn't the case, right? So he's stumbled upon something that usually isn't the case. I mean, can you tell someone, well, no, you must convince yourself that you do not hear what you hear. That's
exactly, and I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I don't have a solution for you because I don't know that it's a problem like that won't be fixed by anything other than time. You could, flip between the phantom sensor and the
actual center,
physical sensor a couple of times, and just see if you're hearing it. I would recommend you have you teach your wife or child or somebody, friend, how to do this, and then leave the room, have them switch it to something random, and then come back in and you try to pick out if it's the center channel or not.
Yeah.
If you can pick it out absolutely 100% of the time, then there's an actual real life issue going on here. And it may be that there is a problem that Q200C is somehow busted.
I don't think the other thing that occurred to me is I'm not actually sure how close his primary seat is to the wall behind him, because this could be a case where absorption behind your head as opposed to behind the speaker.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It might be it's very common that people have the wall close to them, behind them, and that can do this kind of effect. That very strong reflection from behind your head can do all kinds of weird imaging things. So maybe some absorption behind your head is another thing to try.
Again, thick blanket.
Thick blanket folded up can test that for you.
Right, just right behind your head. Yeah.
All right.
I guess that's it.
I think that's it.
All right, who else we got left?
We have Jason T, Bobby K, Adam G, Jim P, Dan C, and Carlos P. Those are all the people left on the list. Thankfully, most of those are pretty short-looking questions, so hopefully we can blaze through them at the beginning of next week.
All right, I want to thank our 82 patrons over at patreon.com, especially Grant. The Patreon is a service that allows you to sign up for a monthly subscription to our podcast. $1 a month is the minimum, and infinity is the maximum. So,
Patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign up. Thanks very much to our 82 patrons, including Grant.
All right, I want to thank Karl and Tap for talking us up to SVS.
Yeah, Karl, Tap, congrats on those SVS subwoofer purchases, taking advantage of that Memorial Day sale. That's a good idea, and thanks very much for talking us up.
For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.